are going to have to resist some of the demands from our people if we're going to bridge the gap of the next 5 to 10 years. Because the necessary and essential expenditures of government, considered alone, are going to make it imperative that we live within certain channels of appropriations. Do you know that the experts in the Department of the Budget of this government say that without any new substantive legislation, this country will spend $400 billion in the next 5 years, $80 billion a year. You know that we raised the national debt limit from $275 to $288 billion, and that we will probably have to raise it again by February. Do you know that in spite of record incomes and record revenues, we're going to have a deficit of $10 to $12 billion come July the 1st next year? Do you realize that if our present situation maintains, and if we do not have substantial economic growth, unpredicted economic growth in this country, that our debt limit will reach $400 billion before we again have one single federal.
You no doubt are familiar with the background of the proposed rules. The present rules were adopted in 1946. During the past several years, there has been numerous attempts to revise these rules, and committees from industry have made numerous proposals. Most of them have failed because of lack of agreement among various segments of the industry. Several months ago, the Commission decided to make its own study of the rules and try to come up with something that we could all live with. We have had the benefit of the thinking of the various segments of the industry as well as the thinking of other oil-producing states. While we realize that these rules may not be perfect, we feel that they are reasonable considering the industry as a whole. We want to make it clear that we are not married to these rules and are open to suggestions of any kind that would improve upon them, keeping in mind the industry as a whole as against any selfish interest.
Can you tell me some of the things that you have helped Charlie with? I noticed that during this last tournament out in California, he had some trouble with a flat swing. Could you comment on that?
Well, when you talk about it being flat, Dan, the regular layman, I don't think would have noticed the difference. It was just very little change. He flattened out probably in his hands, top of his backswing. He felt it. Really, it was by feel more than anything.
What is the major thing about Charlie's game that sets him off above the other amateur players these days?
I think, of course, it's his timing and coordination and the will to win, along with having the shots, of course.
He's a 140-pounder, and he stands about 6'1". It doesn't seem like he has much muscle into the ball, so I guess he would have to have magnificent timing.
He'd definitely have to have that.
He played this course out here last year, as I recall, in about 60, didn't he?
Yes, he did. Missed a short putter, he would have had a 59.
this Parks and Recreation Committee hasn't been consulted, hasn't been asked to work with the Planning and Resources Board toward the leasing of it. We have the responsibility of the state. We have the responsibility of the little people, as Representative Cartwright pointed out yesterday, that can't afford lobbyists and can't afford attorneys to come down. We have that responsibility, and yet the Planning and Resources Board, in their action yesterday, showed a complete and utter disregard for the way we felt, the way the Parks and Recreation Committee felt about it. And so I'm going to ask, and I'm going to list about 4 points of why that I think that we should ask the Planning and Resources Board not to lease any parks or any park system, because one, you're breaking your precedent. Now, it's been all right before to lease your lodges, but now this is the first precedent that we're going to establish towards leasing of parks, and everyone in the know will admit that that no one knows what the future of that park will hold. They all admit that it's problematical. The auditor's report showed that probably in the next 2 or 3 years that it would gross or net the state $40,000 to $50,000 under its own operation, yet they're going to lease it now for $30,000. And Planning and Resources Board would be derelict in their duty to the legislature and to the people of the state unless they ask us to look into it and have our recommendations on it. Secondly, it's unfair to the next administration, it's unfair to the next legislature when we go in and ask for additional appropriation for our park system and we come up without any knowledge at all of the leasing facilities or what's been done. And thirdly, I'm going to ask that, and I'm going to hand it to Jack Rhodes of the Legislative Council this morning, that a serious study be given towards establishing a 3-member or a 5-member park board instead of the bulky and cumbersome 11-member board. Because we all saw yesterday what a disgrace it was. 2 members passed. 2 members didn't showed a complete lack of knowledge about what was happening, about the terms of the contract. And as we stated earlier, if they conducted their own private business that way, they'd be bankrupt in 2 weeks. And 2 members weren't there. But when they come around again and they say, well, we wouldn't have done it personally, but we had a little pressure brought to bear on us. And from people that probably don't know any more about the terms of the lease contract, but they're doing it as a favor for a few political cronies.